What up out there? What's up, world? Shout out to all my people that went to Old Westbury College in Hicksville, Long Island. So this is what's special about this episode. I got alumni on there, Terrell Tuggle. Since we went to college back then, he's become a filmmaker, author, theater owner, artist, create some ill crafts and arts that murals. I mean, it's just so much. So this is a special episode. Anybody out there, SUNY Old Westbury, if you went there, watch this episode, click the like button, subscribe, comment, do everything like that. If you're from SUNY, make sure you leave a comment down there that you went to SUNY Old Westbury. You remember us just kind of like creating and crafting. Shout out to Terrell Tuggle on here, man. You a special dude, man. Thank you. Check out the episode, y'all. And this is gonna be a special show for me. It's like a full circle moment for me. So welcome to the stage, Terrell Tuggle. Let's get it, man.
Let's get it, brother. Words, man. Long time in the making, man. My brother, long time.
Yo, oh man, we go back, y'all. Like I would say
30
like
years, man.
Something like that, right?
Yeah.
And it's been amazing to watch the journey of what you've been doing. Also knowing in this journey is a lot of peaks and valleys, man. And
so many peaks and valleys.
To have that sustainability that you've had with opening the storefront and having your own art place and then being a dean in education 24 years, videographer. I mean, you've done so much, but we're going to get into it, man. So I just want to share that, man. But first, where I want to start at, man, is we met at SUNY Old Westbury, man.
SUNY OW, baby. The end of those glory years. Not saying they not still popping, but those was the glory years.
Yeah. I've been up there several times since. They got the new dorms. And I even thought about like when they had the old dorm. I think they still got the old dorms, just like maybe going back and filming a movie of our time there.
Wow.
Yeah, I thought about that.
Is the poetry center still there?
I think everything is still there, except everything is still there, but I think it's desolate now. I don't even know if they use those buildings at all.
Wow.
So that's when I thought about that. So that's on my radar as time goes on in my life and get to that point. But that's one of my ideas, is thinking about, living there wasn't Beverly Hills, you know what I'm saying?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't, but we made the most of it, and I think that just just the culture that we created, all of us lending to it. It just, I really enjoyed it. I think we spent so much time there and away from our own homes. Even on vacation, some of us chose to stay on the yard.
Yeah, we did, and to go there now, it's kind of wild because you see that influx of money they got with the new dorms. They actually recently turned from a college to a university.
Okay.
Yeah, so now they're a university. It's very inspirational going there and so on and so forth. But speaking of that, so we met.
But also because you brought that up, Words, I wanted to just make mention of this because I'd be remiss if I didn't. We also had that class together with Linda Michelle Barron, and I had a history with Linda Michelle Barron. And I didn't know if you were familiar with that, but that was one of the reasons why I came to SUNY Old Westbury, because I knew she was a part of the English department. When I was a young child, my mother and her worked together at several places. And one of the first books of poetry that I ever received was entitled "The Sun Is On" by Linda Michelle Barron. It had such an effect on me that my mother brought me to meet her. She said, my son, he just loves this book. And so when I saw her again at school, that's how we reconnected. I reminded her, my mother, Dr. Valerie Murray Tuggle, had introduced us. She said, yeah, you're Valerie's son. And I told her how inspirational that book of poetry was. And I dedicated this last book of poetry that I did to Dr. Linda Michelle Barron. I just wanted to make mention of that because I know she was also an integral and important part in your artistic and development.
Yeah, I met her kind of late on. I didn't have her as hands-on as D did. Like D is real tight with her. Actually, D went to New York recently and got with her. And
that's so dope.
So I usually talk to Miss Linda Michelle Barron through Instagram and LinkedIn. So
Okay.
that's typically how
That's the
we
only time that's the only way I've still been able to stay in touch with her as well.
yeah. So what I wanted to do though is like on here, I typically usually share my experience with who I've met and everybody. So one of the things I always wanted to say to you
Yes.
that I learn from you, that I take a piece, like everybody I've met, I've taken a piece from them, some shape, form, or fashion of impact and figured out my perspective and understanding how we all are different, but how we all are here together and able to share these messages. And what I got from you, man, that I'll always remember is vulnerability. You always was vulnerable, man. Like, and it was powerful, man. Like, you would write poems. You could write poems about the world, social issues. You were able to write poems. You were probably the first person I seen even mentioning the word queen in poetry for ladies, and it was like there was a level of respect and integrity you had in the words that you would write when we were at Old Westbury and doing poetry that I wasn't in that mindset yet. So it was dope to see you do that because it gave me another perspective, man. So I always want to make sure that I let you know that you had a profound effect on me to be able to see another brother my age able to respect ladies and write things that were showing the vulnerability of life and how we should approach it, giving optimism and everything. So I wanted to share that with you because you may
Thank
have
you.
not known that,
Thank
man.
you. Thank you for that, man. Thank you.
Yeah,
And it was, and I like to say that was inspired from the women in my family and my community, and just seeing their beauty and them pouring into me. Also, coming up, I had so many poetry albums around me. My mother and my father were both fans of the written and spoken prose. So the Watts Prophets and the Last Poets, Sonia Sanchez and Nikki Giovanni. Those albums were always around, and they
okay.
had such a profound effect on my writing. So by the time I had got to college, I had been sharing my poems throughout the projects, and it was just something that, I would choose to share with people who I cared about, some people who I thought would be receptive to it, and people who I thought I could connect with on that level. Some people never really got it. I didn't really care, but I knew I needed to share it with others, to gain some other perspectives and just see if maybe something I was saying had some relevance. So by the time I had gotten to college, I had already been doing poetry open mics. The New Eurekan poetry. I had rocked with Bobito a few times, and he had brought me down to
Right.
rock on his show once or twice. And so by the time I had gotten to college, I wasn't quite there, but I was more comfortable with sharing. And then the environment that you and D and so many other dope people had created there, it was one in which you could share and be comfortable with sharing and be comfortable with being vulnerable. And so I thank you guys for that too, because that was so important to my early developmental psychology, being able to share and knowing that the people who I was sharing with would be receptive to it and even reciprocate it and share their own thoughts and opinions on subjects like those or others. So thank you also, brother.
Thanks, man. Yeah, man. It was dope to watch you perform and do perform your poetry and talk about those topics. But now, that's why I love doing the show. Because I'm able to understand what made you. See, I didn't know you. You see, you listening to Nikki Giovanni, like you
Oh
listening to
yeah,
all
Nikki
this stuff.
Giovanni and Sonia Sanchez. No one really had more of a profound effect on me than the Watts Prophets. The Watts
Okay.
Prophets, which were a group of poets, but they had a sister in there, and she just had such a resounding voice to me in some of the things she was saying and some of the pieces that they put together. And Sonia Sanchez and Nikki Giovanni, her poems, they just resonated with me. Photography was one of the poems that, the listeners, please go back and check that one, Photography by Nikki Giovanni. That one has resonated with me for over 40 years. But having those poems and those poetry albums around me, they became like my own sanctuary. I grew up in a very tough environment, from Gates Avenue to Ebbets Field. So being outside is more of a culture for younger people today than it was back then. Everybody wasn't just outside. Outside was very dangerous. Not saying it's not now. So those video games early, those board games, and the radio, my Walkman, those things were such an important safe space for me. I can be kind of transported to somewhere else and then come back and create my own things. And so that's what I would do, sit in the house, listen to those old poetry albums. Sometimes my dad would come by the room and be like, "Oh, you digging that?" And my mom always realized that was a space that I was going to occupy at some time in my life. And she would always take me around to either people or to things that could help to highlight, that part of me that was developing. And I think that was important too, to my writing and being vulnerable and being willing to share. My mother and father always created these little moments throughout the course of my childhood where they would kind of put me on the stage. Somebody would say their child could do this. Somebody could say, I heard someone do that. Oh, well, T can do that. Go ahead and do it, and that kind of just, created in me this idea that if I felt I can do something and I had something to share with the environment or the community, do it. I did without a second's notice or thought, because it was important. They kind of created that idea in me.
Man, so we're gonna get into this, man. So
I
explain
got some
to
new
us.
pieces for the people too, if you want to hear too. I got some new pieces.
Oh yeah. If you want to share, definitely. If you want to share, I got so many questions for you because like now I get to go behind the scenes with you and delve deep into what you're doing. So Adult Film Productions, right? Like you
Yes.
have this company. So can you explain to us what are you looking for and what's
Yes.
kind of the vision, the mission behind you having this company?
Yes, thank you so much for even bringing a dope film up. Originally in 2011, when I was getting into videography, I started a company called Film Barn Brooklyn LLC, and that's when I was just doing music videos. I was just doing artist profiles, little short documentaries, and some commercials. I always had the idea that I was going to make a shift at some point to doing film. Originally, that LLC incorporated my lawyer at the time, Jason Vives Esquire. Shout out to him. And my partner at the time, also Michael Bonds, Michael White, shout out to him. And they were all partners in Film Barn BK, but I knew I wanted to own my own ideas moving forward if I wanted to get them produced outside of Film Barn, if I wanted to sell a script. And so I developed Dope Film Production LLC, which is owned by me, my daughter, and my son, Asia Medina and Jordan Tuggle. They're
Nice.
on in documentation as co-owners.
Yeah.
So a dope film production was going to be a place where I was just going to incubate and develop socially conscious ideas and socially conscious thinkers and writers that wanted to get those ideas out in film. And I wasn't necessarily going to do it in the in the uh, in the way it's been done. I want to say more regularly now. I wanted to kind of take a step back and do things more analog. So some of the things I wanted to come out of a dope film production were going to be shot on Super 8, shot on Super 16, shot on Super 35. But also, if we had some of the new advanced cameras, if people wanted to shoot things on iPhone, that'd be great too. But mostly it was going to be about the content. I wanted it to be to have content that had a socially conscious moral compass. And so the first film coming out of it is The Master Teacher, that came out in 2023. And it's an important film. I think it is an important piece. It's a book that I wrote in 2019 about a praise dancer that goes into a void, and he comes across different spiritual modalities. He comes across an Israelite, he comes across a Christian, he comes across a Moor, he comes across a 5%er, he comes across a Muslim, and he comes across a comedic scientist, and they all give him holy books, and he's able to not only learn but grow and develop in these different modalities. And it's a part of the journey and where he ends up in the journey, where I wanted to kind of give people an opportunity to create conversations centered around some of these different spiritual modalities, where in the past we may have cast judgment without doing research or without having proper experience. And so I wanted to kind of create a cultural conversation of sorts. And so I chose a praise dancer because through liturgical dance, he's able to speak without using just word, but using the physical form of gesticulation through body movements to express himself. And so I thought that would be an interesting caveat to the movie too. So, to all of the viewers and listeners, please take an opportunity to check out The Master Teacher by T. Tuggle. It's now on Short of the Week by Short Verse. It's been out since 2023, and it's the first film under the umbrella of Adult Film Production LLC.
Yeah, I got it right there on the screen. Make sure y'all check it out on shortverse.com.
Yeah.
So
And I sent you different iterations. You saw about 15 different iterations from the first, and I wanted to let you know how important you were. There were a group of people who I knew I wasn't going to, because of not being in close proximity, have you guys be able to come in as an
yeah,
interest group and check the piece out, and then we do a Q&A. So I sent different iterations to you guys throughout the course of its first edit to the last edit that's now out there. So I don't know if you've seen it recently, but check it out again, where it's much different than the one I showed you sometime early in December of last year.
okay, I will do. I will do. What I loved about it was that it provided somebody to actually consider perspective.
Yes.
Because that's the thing, right? When everybody's having their own beliefs and cultures and ideals, sometimes it's difficult to understand that your ideals can provide something for me, even though I'm not necessarily delve deep into what you're doing, but there's something in that. There's
Yes.
something. There's
Yes.
something in that.
There's
There's
something.
something
There's a value in that.
in
You know.
that.
Yes, in that. And it's funny because I teach my kids in a class called Perspective and Perception, that we all have our own unique perspectives. That's how we all see the world in our own unique way. Why it's so important to write our own material, to express ourselves, because even though we all see the same things, we all have our own unique ways of seeing it. And then in perception, that's the value we give to those things we see in the world. We have to watch our perspectives and our perceptions and keep them open-ended so that they're ever growing and developing with different
Yeah.
experiences.
So then I want to also speak on the project you got going on now is For the Culture, a Bed-Stuy chess
Chess documentary.
documentary.
Yes.
So man, ever since I've known you, you've really been into chess. That's like kind of like a staple to what you got going on. It's kind of like the symbolism to what you have. It's like a metaphor for who you are. So we're going to delve into more of that as well. So
Yes.
tell us about the importance of why you decided to do this chess documentary.
Yes, it really starts with my father, the late James L. Tuggle III. He transitioned, I wanted to say, sometime in my daughter, she was born in 2018, December 2018. My father transitioned, and he was always a chess enthusiast. He taught me the game at about 7 years old. And interestingly enough, when he taught me the game at 7 years old, even when in talking with me about teaching me the game, he said it's probably not something you're going to gravitate to right now, but I think if you catch on with it, it's something that you'll enjoy the experience of it throughout the course of your life. This is him telling you about 7 years old, and he gave me this book. I think it was Chess Problems to Solve. I didn't realize the significance of the book, but that book, the first book written by the first Black chess player of notability, a gentleman by the name of Theophilus Thompson. He's referred to as the Cage Bird. He was a former slave turned freedman and turned chess champion. First player of chess notability called the Cage, but named the Cage Bird, Theophilus Thompson. Chess Problems to Solve. He gave this to me when I was like 7 years old. I did lose a copy, and I really didn't pick up the game until later on. My father would always play with my uncle Ivy. And that's my middle name. I'm Terrell James Ivy Tuggle. Back then, the people from the South, they give you like 15 names. So I'm James, Terrell James Ivy Tuggle. But both of them would always play. My father played regularly. He could play weekly, he would, but always on the holidays, he played anybody who would play. And I always thought to myself, to make a long story even longer, that one day I just want to develop outside of us playing whenever we did and just be able to beat him. I was also a fan of the old TV show sitcom Family Ties. Alex P. Keaton would always beat his father at chess, who had taught him really quickly. I'd always kind of fashioned the idea that I wanted to have that kind of relationship with my dad too. So when I got older, actually 17, when I went to SUNY Old Westbury, I thought I knew how to play. I came across a couple of other brothers who knew really how to play. And so
Right.
they took me, when I came back to Brooklyn, I went to this park, not far from Ebbets Field, this little park right across from Prospect Heights, right across from Brooklyn Museum. Triangle Park is actually Ronald McNair Park. And all these brothers and black and brown brothers was in there playing chess, and sisters was in there playing chess, and they was headbangers. And I said, man, listen, they was so close proximity, I'm going to spend my time here. I'm gonna do my research, and I'm gonna put in my sweat equity. I'm gonna take it right back to the hood. I'm gonna crush everybody there, and most notably, I'm gonna be able to crush my pops, just like Alex P. Keaton used to be crushing his pops. And that's exactly what happened. Years in that little triangle park, Ronald McNair. We started going from there to right down the block, right on Empire at the Wendy's when it would rain. That culture is still alive. When we stopped Triangle Park, we moved to Fulton Street Park, right across from Brooklyn, from Boys and Girls High. And that's what this chess documentary is about. That's why I want to just bring you full circle. All of us migrated to these different stations throughout Brooklyn, and then now it's just grown and developed into something of legend of sorts. So there's these very important chess destinations in New York City, which is one of the greatest chess places in the country, in that we have some of the greatest chess resident players, the highest ranking resident players. Some of the highest ranking resident players live and reside in New York City. Detroit, I think, has the most. But that's just another story. But also the thing about it is there's West I think there's that park uptown, West 14th or Union Square. Everybody knows about that. But the real chess park is Fulton Street Park, which is on Fulton Street in Brooklyn, across the street from Boys and Girls High. That's the park where I really grew and developed as a player, and I got my chess mentors from that park. And so this documentary is not only to memorialize them and the park, but also to make note of the black and brown players and them lending to the overall chess playing diaspora throughout the country, and how we haven't really been identified and how we haven't really been appreciated for what we've given to the game. You know, there's a brother who I've been working with, a young brother by the name of Jaylon Eustache. And our whole idea now is we're rebranding chess with black and brown faces. You know, so I teach a chess course, I teach a film course at my school. He teaches chess and film, but this film is going to be about those black and brown brothers and sisters who've been playing chess for many years, like my late father, their experiences throughout the chess parks, throughout New York City and throughout the country, and the intellectual, social, and cultural exchange that happens across those chessboards, not only in New York City, but throughout the country. And it's an important piece, you know, and it's for the culture. I think it's aptly entitled.
I think it's definitely important. I've tried to learn chess here and there, and then like I don't play it consistently enough, so then I never grasp the full thing, because you got to play it consistent. But when we were on the tour, that was like a big deal. Like being on tour, there's a lot of artists that when you got those long drives, so they got the mini chessboard, you know, with the magnet pieces, and it's a very important thing during those long drives that people play chess to kind of take up time, and it's a thinking person's game. People take it very seriously. So I've been able to watch it, and I still have that urge to want to learn it. So over time, I'm definitely going to make sure I learn it for sure. I do want to ask more about your research. So when you're doing this research, do you typically go to the sites? Are you interviewing people through the phone? Are you going to visit people for the movies and everything else? How do you do your research often?
Well, you know, I'm sure, you know, there's several different types of ways, and there's several different modes of documentary filmmaking, you know. But in this one in particular, I always had my idea on who this film would be about. You know, as you know, the title, as it would allude, you know, it's about Bedford Stuyvesant and Bedford Stuyvesant. To give you a little bit more insight, it's also more importantly about my own particular journey. So it's about being ARTPEACE, the chess artist. I'm known in the chess community as such. I'm the only artist to date that actually incorporates chess pieces in my artwork. And there's about 5 to 6 guys that I've been playing with throughout the course of the last 20 to 25 years. One who actually transitioned while playing in the chess park. Shout out to Chuck, God bless the dead. He was playing chess when suddenly he transitioned in Fulton Street Chess Park. So it's also to highlight, memorialize Chuck. Also, my chess mentor by the name of Kamikaze, he was from Fort Greene section of Brooklyn, Ingersoll Houses, Art Bridge. a very important art community, an art company that always highlights inner city and local artists and artistry. They gave me the opportunity to do a mural, a chess mural. And they told me, you
Okay.
know, where did I want to put it? And I could choose any projects throughout Brooklyn to put it. And I actually put the art mural right over his building in Fort Greene. And there's a little QR code and a little write up about him and a write up about me and our connection to chess and our connection to community. And that was actually such an important opportunity. So the documentary will talk more about that. It'll explain more about my process in becoming ARTPEACE the Chess Artist. But also, to get back to your question, there were about 6 or 7 guys that I knew I wanted to talk to, that I wanted to highlight, that I wanted to focus on. There was a documentary that I saw back in the days. It was done by this very talented director, Diane Martell. It was about Brooklyn dancers. It was entitled Wreck and Shop Live from Brooklyn. And I saw it on this old TV show that used to come on Channel 13 called Alive TV. And it was about these sets of Brooklyn dancers, the Mop Top crew, about another 2 or 3 crews, and I think altogether was about 12 of them. But that was to date, that was the greatest documentary I have ever seen about any topic. And I would also suggest to your viewers and listeners, check that out, Wreck and Shop Live from Brooklyn. It was done in 1992 by Diane Martell. She did a bunch of music videos back in the day. She also did Method Man's I Bring the Pain. If you love that video and other videos like that, you understand how good Diane Martell is. But check that documentary out. That documentary also shaped my idea about creating for the culture a Bed-Stuy chess documentary. So it kind of it won't look like hers. Hers was shot in black and white. Very stylistic. If you're familiar with her style, you understand it's in her wheelhouse. But it was definitely I want to say just the impetus, but it was definitely one of the provocations to me wanting to do this piece. She had these dancers that she wanted to focus on, and I had these particular set of black and brown chess players that had also inspired me and been a part of my own chess story and chess journey that I wanted to highlight. And that's what I'll be highlighting in this piece. You know, there's Rob, we call him Robster. There's Trey, there's Boss Son, Donnell, Brooklyn Jerry, another brother by the name of Terrell. There's a couple of other brothers who are staples, and Chuck and Kamikaze, God bless the dead, both of them, who were staples of that park. And anybody who's familiar in the chess playing community and familiar with that park, when they see these guys that I'm highlighting, also Master Colding also will be a part of this piece. They'll understand the significance of highlighting these 6 or 7 guys.
I think what's so dope about
Also,
it.
I'm sorry because I didn't all the way answer your question, but this I would do a traditional documentary a little different when in doing my research and in doing my due diligence. But this research was also done by my own particular chess journey, so I had already knew who I wanted to speak to and what I wanted to speak about.
Yeah, what I think is going to be dope about the documentary is that everybody that you've named, all these people you've named, there's that same group in another city. There's that same
Yes.
group in another place of the world. There's the same idea going on everywhere else, and everybody's able to go, yo, we need to see this everywhere across the world.
Yes.
It's going to be people
And
that
that's what
need
we
to
want
see
to do.
this.
That's
You know what I mean?
that's what I want this piece
They're going
to
to be
do.
able to reflect to it. So you're bringing your neighborhood and this neighborhood and these people to, you're basically, honestly, you're making a mirror for a lot of people out there across the globe to be able to be like, wow, somebody did this about us. Somebody
Yes.
did this about our community. So I think that's what's special about it. And throughout the journey, how were you from, since I've known you in college to now, how did you find your purpose? Because I met you doing poetry, and then now you've evolved into so much more. When,
Yes.
you know, how was it finding your purpose? Like, this is me. Because sometimes it's hard to accept that as an artist because it's not always roses.
Yes, you're right. You know, growing up in Bedford-Stuyvesant on Gates Avenue, when I think I was 12 years old. I was working in a program, Roots Revisited, that was run by a gentleman very influential in my life, Mr. Michael Hooper, and another lady, Maria Davis, put me in touch with people who were working on a film that was right on my corner. So I'm on Gates between Lewis and Stuyvesant. I go to the school across the street, ISPS 308, under Dr. Evelyn Castro. Anybody who knows anything about Brooklyn education in particular, you know that name, Dr. Evelyn Castro, one of my earliest mentors. And so I'm working at PS 26 on this youth newspaper. And I have to take Stuyvesant back over to Gates. And there's this film set going on Stuyvesant. I think this is early 88. And they're also using my junior high school right across from my house, 730 Gates Avenue, as a place where they're storing the cameras and they're doing table reads and having lunches and talking film stuff over in the school. And because I knew some people who worked there and knew the teachers there, I'm getting some access during this time. To make a long story a longer one, that film ended up being Do the Right Thing. And the first people that I ever saw black and brown at the helm of a camera was Spike Lee and Ernest Dickinson. I'm watching, and I have my mother found online a picture of me on the film set, and I'll share that with you and the viewers of Do the Right Thing. So I actually saw them film the love and hate scene. I actually saw them film the Jordan scene with Bugging Out. I actually developed a little small relationship over the course of that summer with Giancarlo Esposito because he was just a community guy. He was a young guy and a community guy who just took an interest in me because he would see me so regularly. So, you know, the inspiration from the poetry, Linda Michelle Barron, my parents always keeping these poetry albums around me. The inspiration from the art, it came from my one of my art teachers across the street from 308, Miss Sawyer, who introduced me to Romar Bearden, that introduced me to collage. My father introduced me to chess. So my work reflects collage and chess. And then the film inspiration, it came directly from Spike and Ernest and watching them helm that film set. And me saying to myself, I can see myself doing that, you know? And I just became somebody who fell in love with films. You know,
Yeah,
the first time I saw Cooley High, I fell in love with it.
that's
To the
one of
point
my
where my
favorite.
father, he took such an interest in my love of film, he brought me the complete VHS at the time, the complete series of films from Michael Schultz. And for people who don't know, viewers and listeners, Michael Schultz, he did Cooley High. Michael Schultz, he did Which Way Is Up with Richard Pryor. Michael Schultz did Car Wash. Michael Schultz did Crush Groove. Michael Schultz did The Last Dragon. And this is a black director. So my father, he gave me, you know, he helped to expand my vision. You know, this is something you keep talking about. And I would spend so much time at the Metropolitan and the Duffield downtown Brooklyn with my aunt Annette Lyons, you know, trying to take me away from the hood. We would either go to the Macon Library in Bedford-Stuyvesant down Lewis, or we would go to the Brooklyn Museum, or we would go downtown to the Met or the Duffield Theater. So all of these things were part of my early developmental psychology. So when I was looking for safe spaces around from the loud noises outside, the guns or the drugs and the crime, you know, I found myself in the library, in the museum, in the theater. That's on Broadway, off Broadway, and in the movie theater as well. I could see myself in those places because my family would take me to these places and it helped to create this idea for me that, you know, if I wanted to participate in these things, I could and would at some point, you know. So I knew I wouldn't just do poetry. I knew I would also do art. I knew I would also do film. I knew I would also do video. I knew I would also write and perform in plays. And these were things that I was always doing, even as a child, in like an incubatory phase. And my parents and the people in my life who were always pouring into me, they were also helping to develop it. And any opportunity that they could create for me to showcase what I was doing in like this lab that I was calling my bedroom or the living room, they would. And they did,
Yeah,
you know. And then I started to do that for myself because they had created this idea. This is how you do it. You showcase the community to the community first of your friends and family, and then the borough, then the state, then the world. It was kind of just like, you know, this is how we do. You know, and that's not just for me, that's for everybody in my family. All the cousins put on during the barbecues, all the cousins put on during the reunions. All the cousins put on Sunday dinners. All of us were put on. Like literally, we grabbed the little tennis rackets and pretend they were guitars and do little lip sync things. I'm sure we all kind of did it before the technological advancement had it to where everybody's head was in a camera or on a screen, and they were allowing the TV to do the thinking. You know, we were out there doing the creating, and it was all coming from our imagination, which was also a very important role, played a very important role in everything I'm doing and everything my parents and family helped to do. They helped me to develop my creative sense.
Yeah, I think that's a big reason why I enjoy teaching and why you love teaching is because we know we're getting these blank canvases coming into the room and we're able to help them develop a picture. A lot of times what I find dope about it when people ask me, I'm like, you know, you literally, a lot of these kids are coming in the room and it don't matter about the Chromebook that they have or if they have paper, they have this thing in their mind that they're trying to figure out, how do I bring this out to the real world? So that's what I find so interesting and always find compelling about being an educator and a teacher. And it's dope that you've been able to understand, even as we got older, you and getting older, the importance of that exposure to you is very important. Exposure is a key word and key factor to becoming the next generation of who you are and the iteration of who you're going to be. So I wanted to say, so with the you write poetry, scripts, books, all these things. How long does it take you to maybe write a poem or script and book? How do you gauge your time on each one or what you're doing?
You know, I'm so glad you asked me that question, and thank you. You know, the process, and maybe everybody's processes are always ever changing. I guess as we're always ever changing and growing and developing. You know, so it's a little different than it was in the past, where I would kind of try to at times sit down and force myself to do a thing, write a thing, think about a thing. You know, I thought forcing certain things was the way to go. I would look at some of these different videos from other talented writers of scripts, other talented writers of movies, other talented writers of poetry, and they would talk about their process. And a lot of people would say, you know, in order to get certain things out, sometimes you have to force yourself to do a thing, you know, to maximize, I guess, the potential of what you can create or what you can get out there. And so I was forcing myself to try to sit down and write about what was going on with myself, what I was feeling. And I think the process it developed, and this was early on. I'm talking
Yeah,
about in my teens. This was how I would try to do it, you know. But as I grew and developed, you know, I take time to write things as they come to me. So I always keep paper on me now. I always keep a writing utensil of some sort on me right on now. So if I have to write on the bottom of a sneaker, if I have to write it on the pants leg, I'll write it as the inspiration comes currently, because I realize I won't remember that line. I won't remember that thought in that way later on when I try to get it to the paper, when I try to take it to the canvas. So I'll try to sketch something out right then, or I'll try to write a line down when I hear it or when I feel it now. And what I do more now than I did back then is I'll just get a thought out and then I'll just keep going back to it, erasing or bringing things back, omitting things. You know, I've realized the power of omission, um, remission. I've realized the power of of uh, of going back weeks and maybe a month later to something.
yeah,
I used to think that when I finished the poem, it was done, and then I realized it's really kind of done when it's done. You know, it could even make its way into the page of a book. It doesn't mean it was done. I might want to go back to it. There might be something else to add to it. Some of the poems that I have out now that I put in this last book of poetry, Old Soul, these poems are some have been written and rewritten over the course of the last 10 years. And it wasn't until maybe the last couple of weeks where I've been just reading them and I'm saying, nah, I think these are done. I think this is what I was trying to say. And this is how I was trying to say it. Like, if you give me a second, I want to share one. That's my word. I'm going to fly one day, maybe far away, where love and light reside, where old heads still build and peace be still, with no rod or staff by my side. I'll put use to these mudcloth wings and fly past fault and fall and file of sky. And then at night, when there are no ship sails or chemtrails in sight, I'll reemerge to teach other black and brown kids how to take flight. That's my word. Now that poem, that's been going through a bunch of iterations, but over the course of the last 4 or 5 years, and performing it in front of other black and brown children and their experience with it and their parents' experience with it, now I understand that, yeah, maybe that poem is finished. Maybe that's where it needs to be. Maybe it's said all I was trying to say, and I can read it and even hear it again and kind of experience it as something new every time. And there's a joy in even saying it, and someone new, like your listeners or viewers, experience it for the first time. So the writing process, just like I think my growing process as a human, is just taking on so many different iterations, and I'm sure it will. But
I want to
now I know that what I say is not necessarily final. It may be something that's kind of where I want it to go, but maybe I need to look at it again, maybe several times before the world gets a chance to either see it or hear it.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about a point that you made that I typically ask a lot of times is, but you kind of said it. You mentioned how you'll write it down. So are you still writing your stuff down with pen and paper, or typically going to the phone with it? Because some people say they don't have that same connection doing it with the technology as they do with the pen and pad. So where's that balance at? Or do you still kind of use more traditional with it, and the importance of maybe writing it down?
You know what's interesting? I'm glad you asked that, two words. Because I do both. What
Okay.
I find out with me, even with my handwriting, it's not even legible to me at times, especially when I'm trying to get out something. So when I go back, I don't even know what I was trying to say or the iambic pentameter in which I was trying to say it. So
Yeah.
sometime with the new technological advancement, if I can go to the screen recording and I can say it the way I want it to be heard with the timbre and the then I can remember it later on. Oh, that's where
Right.
I was going with it. And if I could write it down so it's legible because I typed it out in the notes, it may come off better than when I write it in a pen, a pencil,
Yeah.
or a marker, because sometimes I'll write it so fast, or I tend to write fast. And when I try to look over or read what I've written that wasn't typed, I sometimes can't make it out. And that's just the truth.
Yeah.
So if I'm
That's
writing a
that.
script or anything, I know if I want to go back to that, and I know that that's an important something that I need to be developed, I make sure it goes to at least a note that I can hear again, or a note that I wrote down that I typed out completely, so I know it's legible.
So do you think, as far as when considering time, so with poetry, that's always a work in progress from what I'm hearing. It's always a work in progress with poetry. Which I could relate to that from writing lyrics. Like
Yeah.
sometimes I write a verse and then I'm gonna switch that out, and you can change a verse even in the studio, even after you felt it was done. As far as like when you're writing your scripts and books, what's that for you as far as time? Do you put it as far as, okay, I need this script to be done with a deadline here, or I need this book to be done by here, or you give yourself that compassion to say it's done when it's done for this script and book?
Another great question. Because I'm in, uh, um, I'm in a space where I don't make a bag from all my books. I don't make a bag from the videos. I don't make a bag from the films. I'm paying most of the bills from education.
Yeah.
So a lot of what I'm doing is for the love and it's for the culture, you know. And so if there were deadlines, because of professional for professional reasons, then I'm
Yeah.
sure my process would be different. But because money from art, is sometimes it's hard to come by. So
Yeah.
a lot of these endeavors are really endeavors of love for myself, for the community, for the culture. And so they develop over the course of the time in which that I can get the idea out. So if I had the additional income, to shoot some of the short films that I've written already, some of the features that I've written already, I would. But not having the money to do certain things, it kind of changes how certain, for me, how certain things are developed. So, if I'm putting out a book, you know, if I was one of those writers who was writing for a publishing house who was given a deadline and then maybe also given
Right.
an expense account where I could go and write in a cabin somewhere for the next 2 or 3 months. Maybe my process would be a little different, but because I spend 10 to 12 hours in the classroom. I'm in charter now, so you know how they do you. I'm in 10 to 12 hours in the classroom and then another 4 to 5 hours in travel home. A lot of what takes place is on the weekend. A lot of what takes place is after work. And working in with schools and working with kids is really no after work for us, Words, right? In order to really, really do it, you always have to find time to do it, even in your own time. Sometimes it takes away from your family. Sometimes it takes away from your art. Sometimes it takes away from things you do outside of that profession. But in order to give the kids everything that they need, you have to take that extra time to do it, whether it's to grade the papers or to develop the tests or to go out and do the research and get these additional techniques and best practices to bring to the classroom to create a better academic atmosphere, environment for them, whatever that is. It's always after those clocked in hours at the school. And so that sometimes can take away from the process. So for me now, I've just given myself over to the process, but I don't wait anymore. I used to try to wait for the right camera. I used to try to wait for the right time. And I think that what's happened just in my old age now, I'll be 49 in November, I realized there is no right time. The time is now.
Right.
What's important now is to create a working resume of art. I have a series of books. I have a series of art pieces. I want to have a series of films. I have a series of music videos, just things to look back on so I can see the growth and development. But those things exist. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And it's something about finishing a project that kind of gets you going about the next project. Whether you finish the last book, it's like, what, I can do this next one. Let me
Yeah.
start writing it. Maybe it changes the process a little bit, but you
Yeah.
start to see, I can get a chapter done a month. I could put a book out in 6 months, 7 months. I could do it after you've done one. And I'm sure you've had a similar or the same experience with all of the albums you put out, you know? Once you've gotten one done and that sense of accomplishment, which is a term that was escaping me, now you kind of want that again. And then if it's received in love and people gain some light from it and they tell you, yo, man, something on that song you said, man, like that song you got Brooklyn, there was something on there, I connected with, now you like, what, I want to reconnect with the people. And I also wanted to lend this also to my writing process about the poetry, and I think it kind of aligns itself with how MCs do things. I say the poem out to myself, and I'm gonna be honest, Words. If the shit sound corny, the people will never hear it, and people will be like, "Yo, what do you mean by sound corny?" There was a time I think in poetry where people who were writing poetry wanted it to sound a certain way.
Yeah, it
There was
was.
this poet in particular, and no disrespect to him, but there was this gentleman by the name of D Knowledge. And when D Knowledge took off with his career, a lot of people started to make poetry and perform spoken word a certain way. And so when they would do things, it would say like, I want to know this, that, do. And it was like this working iambic pentameter to it where everybody's stuff would sound like that. And some of the stuff was dope. My stuff never sounded like that. And I don't like stuff that sounds like that either. Not saying that this stuff isn't dope. So a lot of my stuff will sound like either a conversation or sound like that poetry I heard when Nikki Giovanni, when Amiri Baraka, when Sonia Sanchez, the last poets and the White Prophets, when they were doing it, because that's who inspired my poetry, you know.
Yeah. What I
And so
what I
I'll
want.
say it out loud, and if it sound corny or if it sound like I'm trying to make it sound like something, or if it's forced in some way, then the audience will never hear it. And that kind of changes the process too. What word choice, what line choice, how this sounds, how this feels, the cadence behind it. Does it reverb? Does it resonate with the people? That kind of thing. I'll go back into the poem and be like, that ain't nah.
Yeah. What I've from hearing everything you explained, also what I've taken from it all is that you've learned to give yourself grace. So like, as an artist, it's hard to give ourselves grace, man, because we're thinking of satisfying others, satisfying ourselves, having a deadline. If I don't get this out, if this ain't here, if this ain't, it's a lot of pressure. But I think as an artist and hearing how you explained it, like, hey, I got this priorities and this and that, and this will come out. It's going to, in due time, it will come out. But got to give yourself grace as an artist. And then you were speaking about like, you mentioned the word atmosphere. So I wanted to ask you about atmosphere. You can still elaborate. I see you want to elaborate on that, but I also want to ask you about your atmosphere, what it's like when creating. Now, is it daytime, nighttime, dark room, traveling? What's that like for you with the atmosphere when creating?
Yeah. With creating, the atmospheres are different when they're different endeavors. So when I'm doing art is really kind of the one time when I'm doing art, I like to be alone. And I realized a lot of things with my process, they hark back to my childhood. A lot of the things I did when I was a child, as an only child for 11 years before my younger brother was born, the way I did stuff back then, I'm most comfortable, and I kind of reach back to that. But art still remains the only thing. When I'm doing an art piece, I like to be alone. Sometimes Afro beats playing, sometimes I'll have a film playing, but I won't be listening to that. I just want to have a visual. I just want to have something auditorially going on, just so that cognitive part of my brain has that going on also. So whenever I want to put the paintbrush down, I can let some of the images and some of the words do the heavy lifting. You know what I mean? Because I'm always overthinking stuff, even when I'm in the act of doing something. If I'm doing a painting, I'm thinking a poem, I'm thinking a film, I'm thinking a book, that type of thing. It just overthink. I'm a chronic overthinker in that regard. But if I'm writing something like a book, or if I'm writing a poem, I like to sometimes be on the train, or I like to sometimes be in a place like a park or at the Brooklyn Promenade. That's another great writing spot for me, or the Brooklyn Botanical Garden. Sometimes I like to connect with nature, but I like to be around the people. I'm inspired by the people. I'm inspired by the community. Sometimes I'm also inspired by conversations. I'm also a people watcher. So I sometimes will find something interesting in someone, and that might lead to a few lines or to a few thoughts. You know what I mean? I might just find something majestic in the way that sister is, just standing up on the train and just a queenship. How does that make its way to the paper? And then I'll just spend maybe the rest of that hour or the rest of that day trying to think of some dope way to recapture that dope moment, that dope scene that I've trapped in my head. So with writing, the written word is a little, different. I like to experience, the people. I kind of I want to denote something I heard Rakim say. They said Rakim said, someone asked him if he ever suffered from writing block, and he said, I never suffer from writing block. He said, whenever I want to write something down and I can't get to the next line, I just go outside my door and I live a little more. And then I come back and I put some of that life experience back on the paper. And that's always kind of resounded with me. I always thought that was so dope. And I kind of took a note from that. Whenever I kind of get locked in on something, not saying whatever I'm doing is so important that the next word is going to change the world, but going into wanting to make something dope, something where people can experience something, where people could experience it and get something positive from it. You want it to be a certain way. Maybe that's just my process. I think it's most people creators process. You want it to be a certain way, and then you want it to have you in it. You want it to have that essence of you, where people are like, that sounds like, that looks like, that feels like T Tuggle. I get that. And then to add your little special sauce, sometimes it takes something else. But yeah, with writing or with art, the process or the atmospheres are a little different. I always like to be alone with art. That's a part of my process. I may bring people in throughout the course of it to ask their opinion on something, the color of something, the shape on something. How does that make you feel? I'm big on that question because it's real open-ended. I'm always intrigued by how people respond to that. But when it's writing, I like to be in not necessarily a noisy atmosphere, but one that's conducive to creation, which is usually any place in Brooklyn.
Yeah. Any place in Brooklyn. I agree, man. Taking that walk, just walk outside. Even if I just walk I tell people all the time, I can just walk to the refrigerator and it gives me that, it sedates my mind from overthinking. So like just taking a little walk to the driving, all of that.
A walk,
So
a run, anything.
Anything. So I wanted to delve into the name Art Piece, the chess
Yeah.
artist, right? So that's the name that's pertaining to these pieces of art that you do. That they're incredible. Like if you know, we'll show some pictures of them as well
Thank you.
on here. But they're incredible looking at these pieces of art made from chess pieces. So people that are if you're a chess person that really loves art like that, when you see these pictures, get in touch with him to cop some of that art that you need for your wall. Is real dope. So how did you say, you know what, this is gonna be my direction? I'm gonna take these art pieces and do this, because you could have just said, I play chess, I'm doing a documentary, I'm not gonna do art out of it. So now you said, you know what, I gotta make this part of my staple as who I am too. When did you first start making art with these pieces?
Thank you for that too. My art journey started earlier than even me writing or thinking about getting into film. The first art award I received, I still have it, was when I was 5 years old. It was a piece that I did looking out the window across the street from my junior high school. I was looking at the projects and I drew the projects and I did a painting. And it's still, well, it hung for about 20 years at the district office, District 16. I got that when I was 5 years old. It was about 1980 when I received it. And I was always an artist in a traditional sense. And I put the paintbrush down for some time. I would still do little artistic things, but a lot of my friends, including you, didn't really know that I was an artist in the traditional sense. My family always knew,
Yeah,
but a lot of people didn't know. It wasn't until COVID, and I was away from the job, but still working remote, and I was away from everybody. Still thinking and acting remotely. That a friend of mine, who's also a filmmaker, True Light Films. My brother Adrian Toscano, we call him True from True Light Films. He was we weren't working on videos, we weren't working on films. She said, I've been doing my art. I said, Yo, True, you do art? He said, I do it now. And he showed me these pieces. And over the course of COVID, I think this was COVID, the first part of COVID spread. And I say about the first 6 weeks, he had done about 30 pieces. I'm telling you. I said, man, those are dope. And I took a note from him and I just was inspired and I went right back to art during COVID. And it was during COVID where I developed Art Piece, the chess artist. And all of those pieces you see, all these pieces came out after COVID and during COVID, you know?
okay.
And I think, I remember something somebody told me before, in the world, whenever there's um, when people are struggling financially, when people are struggling even emotionally, you'll see more art um, come out from the people. And I personally experienced that during that time. It was just a weird time, COVID, and the only way I was able to help to create some type of normalcy for myself was through art. And that's where Art Piece, the chess artist, was developed. When I started to do those first pieces, and I started getting, making these wood cutouts, and added the chess pieces to it. When the audience, an initial viewing audience, was just my family at the time, I said, there's something there. Friends of mine's from my lodge said, brother, there's something there. You should, develop
It
that.
definitely is.
This is just who I am. When I thought about it, I said, and anytime I think you try to do something from our era artistically, you want it to have a level of originality. I think that's very important with us. Whenever
For
we
sure.
endeavor to do art, the voice has to be uniquely, individually our own. So going into art world again, I wanted to be able to separate myself from what some of the other great and dope artists were doing. Not even saying that I was one. I just wanted to lend and add on to what they were doing, but I also wanted to have something that made me separate from them. And I am the only chess artist. I am the only artist that actually incorporates chess pieces to date in their artwork. Who will it be in the next couple of years? Who will be inspired by my work in the next couple of millennia? Who knows? But I am the first, in the canon, and that's important to me too. And so to keep going, developing the style and developing the identity of it, and
So
going to what me and Jaylon Eustace was saying, and rebranding chess with black and brown faces. That's also a major caveat to that. Also,
so as you've been doing all of this, how important is it for you to make sure you're telling a story that you feel is going to resonate, right? As far as, because you know, when you're writing these pieces of art and you're also creating these pieces of art, how do you decide or find yourself feeling good about what you're creating when it's sometimes a personal story, and then you're also trying to make sure that it will grab people that may not know about that story? So tell me about your storytelling process, choosing what's important.
Nah, man, these questions are so great. Part of my storytelling process has been about my active listening process. I've always been a really great active listener, and somebody who've always just found myself in a privileged position to be around a lot of great, dope, creative individuals who've had a lot to share, been willing to share and pour into me. Lot of my stories, they aren't just coming from my own personal experience, but they come from experiences I've had with other people who've had some really interesting experiences, and they've become great stories. And they've shared them with me, and they've also, throughout the course of our relationship, they've poured a lot of other great things into me. So a lot of what people are hearing have come from some other great, dope individuals who I've just been in a privileged position to have come across and have shared space and time with in different places. And that's why I think it's always so important also to tell some of these stories, to illuminate some of these characters who, if you haven't had the same privilege that I've had to experience them one on one, that at least maybe you can recapture some of the greatness of what they've lent to me in my life through some of what I tell and the way I tell my own stories through the film, through the poetry, through the art. And I think that's what's so important about collage too, because I think the thing about collage is people can get so much of their own from what you put on the canvas. People can see things that you might not have been there initially thought of when you placed it there, and get something else from art. And same thing from books, same thing from poetry. I think that's one of the beautiful things about art also. You have this initial idea of what you want the audience, the viewing or listening audience, to experience. And maybe they get that, but maybe they get something else too. And it compels them to want to come to you and tell you, when you said so and so, when you were willing to be vulnerable, maybe, it put me in a space where I was more comfortable to be vulnerable in those spaces also. So maybe your words didn't always translate or connect with people the way you wanted them to, but maybe it was something in the way you said them, or something in the way they were delivered, or in the energy in which they were delivered, that translates that same emotion to people, and you can get that same response. Like, I have a poem entitled Crown that kind of speaks to it, and that type of creative process in storytelling. It says, follow where your wonder wanders, circle the Kaaba in your crown chakra, the tertiary palette of human nature, signs, symbols, and nomenclature. Me'afa, Mayat, making salat, making hajj, and giving homage. Deferred dreams are the evidence of things unseen. Darkness is the light we cannot see or choose to be. And during the course of this artistic journey, I just want to kind of be the light, you know, not just shine light and illuminate, the light on certain stories, black and brown stories that, have escaped the hearts and minds and ears of the viewing and listening public, you know, but also just to maybe inspire others to endeavor to have some of these experiences themselves, to share some of their own insights and their own perspectives themselves, and then to know that there is a value to what they have to share, and that there are some people out there that can gain some insight and maybe even gain a positive experience and benefit from those words and from those images, whatever artistic endeavor that they could ever imagine, you know. And part of this journey that I've been on, and just the response from the people and the opportunities that is created for me, I couldn't even imagine, and I haven't made some of the money that I could have thought of making back in the days. I want to be a millionaire artist, and that, it's, but the relationship maintenance and knowing that I'm putting things out there, to inspire, positive things in the culture and the people, that's enough for me now. You
And
know,
that
and all
that
of my
goes to
stories are about that.
that goes to my other question as far as like being an educator, does it affect the messages or the projects you choose to do, right?
Yes.
Because you're telling these stories that are going to affect people generationally. And, what's so dope about doing art, whether it's music, books, scripts, it doesn't have to be discovered the day it releases. It can be discovered 20 years from now, 100 years from now. So
Yes.
when you're crafting these ideas and these things, um, and you're in the education field, do you think like, when these kids see this movie or when the faculty or people from the education field ever have a chance to see what I'm doing, they'll be able to say, wow, that we need to have that in our curriculum. We need to, this is a beautiful thing that affects us.
Yes. I
Okay.
always think that whenever I'm thinking of, or whenever I'm working on a piece, you know,
Yeah.
working in education, sometimes you're limited in some of the things you can do inside the classroom. You don't want to be so pseudo in your teaching that you know. It's funny because I always feel like the greatest teachers show you where to look, but not what to see. And sometimes our past experiences, especially now that I'm going to be 49, they can make us think and act and do a certain way. And I'm very careful that I don't try to promote certain ideologies to my students, and that I don't try to proselytize them based on my own exposure and my own experiences. I try to leave a lot of things open ended for them to have their own experiences. So, when talking about things about racism or talking about uh, the prison industrial complex or the or socioeconomic structures of our neighborhoods, quote unquote ghettos. You're limited in certain things you can say, especially now that I'm no longer teaching high school. I'm teaching grades 6, 7, and 8. Because the kids, especially if you have a really good relationship with them, sometimes they'll take exactly what you say to them verbatim as truth. So you have to be careful that you're doing your own research and that you're giving them information that they can do their own research and gain their own insight and experiences on too, and they're not taking your insights and your experiences for law or truth.
Right.
And that was something that I struggled with early on. Certain topics that would come up if we were talking about President Obama, if we were talking about President Trump. I think we all have our feelings there, but I have to be careful.
Yeah.
As these kids are in their early developmental psychology stage, I have to be careful of the seeds that I'm planting and the trees and the flowers that will grow or the weeds that may grow later on. So I try to keep a lot of things open ended, but I do try to make sure that I give them certain information that kind of helps them to qualify and quantify other things. So I don't teach any of my classes in a traditional sense. So I'll give an example. Like, last year I was teaching chess and film. But my kids, they learned about the 12 universal laws. They learned about the 10 intelligences. They learned about the chakra system. All of these different things I was able to connect thematically to what I was teaching in chess and film. My whole idea and ideology is you can turn prose into practice by finding the practical application of the information. That's everything I do. Is about them
Right.
helping to find the practical application of the information. So, when I'm teaching chess or I'm teaching film, I'm also teaching PEMDAS. So I'm teaching them how in life, anything in life can be a mathematical equation. So you have to order the operations. You put yourself in parentheses first because you do everything in parentheses first, right? You want to live a life of exponentiality. You want to be able to spend money and access, get mom out the hood, give grandma out the hood. So you might have to do other things with a level of multiplicity. I'm saying? You have to be working towards something, thinking of other things, saving for certain things, and you have to divide your time in a certain way. You might have to add some things to yourselves and subtract some things to yourself. And then I go back to that parentheses and exponentials just to make the practical sense of certain things, you know.
Right.
But I'm also very careful not to make them think, act, or do the way I think, act, or do based on
Yeah.
previous experience. And that's a fine line for teachers. Some of the greatest mentors of teachers that I've had have told me how destructive a teacher could be. to
Oh,
early developmental psychology of children,
yeah.
and so how important it is that you take that role, and as one that requires um, certain kind of introspection, where you have to make sure that what you're getting out there is to the value and benefit of the child, to the value and benefit of the community, to the value and benefit of humanity, and not just to the value and benefit of your own ego. And that's something that I've grown to know and develop throughout the course of my time in education also.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, because you just want to give them direction. You don't want to say, you don't even want to say, nah, that's not good.
You don't want to even
That's
say, nah, that's not good.
yeah,
You
you
know,
want to
you
be
kind of
like,
want to say,
okay,
why would that not be good? Why would that
right,
be
right,
bad? Can we
right,
can we can we develop the pros and cons?
right.
Those kind of,
Is there
yeah.
another way to do this? Or
Is
I
there
see what
another
you're
way to
saying.
do this?
Have you
Yes.
thought about this? So man, it's been incredible, man. Can you give us 3 pieces of your work that you suggest people to go check out right now? Give us
Yes.
like,
I want everybody to go to Short Verse, and I want you
okay,
to check out The Master Teacher. I want you to go to Short Verse, and I definitely want everybody to check out The Master Teacher.
I'll
If
put
you're
that up.
ever in Brooklyn, first of all, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this. What was so important about ArtBridge giving me the opportunity to just do a mural? Murals have really inspired my life. I think the greatest mural that I've ever seen in my life is the mural that's outside of Boys and Girls High School. Nothing makes me think of Bedford Stuyvesant. Nothing makes me think of Brooklyn like that mural that's outside of Boys and Girls High School. But the Bedford Bowl, because when I was in Ebbets Field, there was it was a black-owned bowling alley right on Bedford Avenue. It was entitled Bedford Bowl. And they had this beautiful mural outside of Bedford Bowl. And that mural was so important to me. Growing up, I was so inspired about that mural, because in black and brown communities, you don't make your face doesn't make its way to the wall oftentimes unless you've died tragically at the hands of gun
Right.
violence. But that mural was about people who were living and people who had inspired other black and brown people. There were people on that wall who I never knew. Like the first time I ever heard of Ta, Ptah, was on that wall. My father and my mother, they explained who he was and other people based on me creating a conversation on that wall. And anytime I would pass it, I would touch it. So
Yeah.
that I finally got an opportunity to make a mural. It's in the Ingersoll houses. If you're ever in Brooklyn, in the Fort Greene section of Brooklyn, and you're with somebody that has a hood pass, don't just walk up in there saying, yo, ARTPEACE The Chess Artist said I was good to come check his mural. If you feel comfortable enough and the community accepts you because you come with love and life, light and peace in your heart, please check out my mural. But also, if you are a chess player, a chess enthusiast, or you know a chess enthusiast, please check out my book I have out now. All right. It's Words of Affirmation, and it's entitled The Atmosphere of Chess. And just to give you a quick piece on the atmosphere of chess, it's loosely dedicated to one of my mentors. I never had the honor of meeting him, a gentleman by the name of Gordon Parks. He was a chess player, he was an artist, he was a filmmaker, he was a videographer, but also he was probably the greatest photojournalist the world has ever seen. In 1957, I believe, he created this book called The Atmosphere of Crime. And it was him doing a photojournalist essay, a essay journal, whatever you want to call it, on crime in the inner city of Harlem in New York City at the time. It was The Atmosphere of Chess, 1957. Well, my book is The Atmosphere of Crime, 1957 by Gordon Parks. My book is The Atmosphere of Chess, Words of Affirmation by Terrell Tuggle, 2023. 2023. Please check that out. So please, The Master Teacher, check out my mural, ARTPEACE The Chess Artist, and pick up that book, Tuggle Publishing under Blurred Books. I have 12 titles out now, but check out The Atmosphere of Chess, Words
Yeah.
of Affirmation 2023, Tuggle Publishing, Blurred Books. I just
I'm
want to
gonna,
thank you so much. I've been so honored to be a part of
yeah.
this.
No, this is dope. I'm actually gonna have all the links in the description, y'all. So you just go down to the description, click on it. It'll take you to all of his merchandise and everything that he got going on. You know, give us your social media too. before?
Yes, yes, you guys can find me, ARTPEACE The Chess Artist, on Instagram, ARTPEACE The Chess Artist. You can also find me on Facebook, ARTPEACE The Chess. Also, let me give you all my Instagram, ARTPEACE The Chess Artist, Film Bomb BK, at Instagram, a dope film production at Instagram, the Esoteric Theater at Instagram, Tuggle Publishing at Instagram. Also, all of those same titles, ARTPEACE The Chess Artist, Terrell Tuggle, Tuggle Publishing, a dope film production, Film Bomb Brooklyn. You can also find me on Facebook. Also, you can check out my website, theesoterictheater.com. Please, you can find out all of my information. Also, I have a Dropbox if anybody's interested in ordering some of the art or some of the books or some of the wares that are on that website. Please do so. If you want to get in touch with me, you can DM me for info. You can email me at tuggle@gmail.com. You can also email me at theesoterictheater.org. And if anybody wants to get in touch with me and you have an idea, something you want to do right now, or maybe you want to speak about what we've been talking about during this discussion on this show, please reach out to me, 516-698-7446. That's if you just want to Tuggle, you want to talk to ARTPEACE The Chess Artist, Tuggle Publishing, Esoteric Theater, Film Bomb Brooklyn, or Dope Film Production. It's all one and the same. It's all community based. It's all promoting peace, love, and light.
Man, yo, Terrell, man.
Were you able to hear me? Because we're too muffled.
I heard, nah, man, we did great, man.
Right.
We did great, man.
All right. I'm sorry I couldn't have the computer. I know sometimes I can be a talking head. I was just so excited to be a part of this.
Yo.
And this is the first year in production. I'm a part of the first crew of people that made it to the show. I'm a couple of shows after Thurston Howell. Like, I'm really excited about this. Like,
nah, man.
And please, if you ever have any panels talking about hip hop, talking about writing, please don't hesitate to think of me.
I'm not, brother. You know, I want to say this before I sign off, and with this is, you know, I not only want to thank you, man. Us being of this age we are, man, and us losing parents and things of that nature, man. I want to also thank your parents, man, for raising you and having you, and instilling all those things in you to make you become who you are, for me to be able to meet you and to inspire me. And I think it's important for me to tell you that, because we don't always get to tell each other these things, because we hit the like button, and the like button, it's cool, but like, it's not the same when I can actually like tell you face to face about this. So I want to thank your parents and for giving you such a great upbringing. And I want to thank you for motivation and inspiration.
Thank you.
So
can I share one last thing before I go?
Yeah, for sure.
Because there's something that I think we would both be remiss if we did not express in this interview in particular. Mm-hmm. You know, in 1993, 1994, on the campus of SUNY Old Westbury, you know, everybody was kind of clicked up. The yard was doing their thing, but everybody was pretty much clicked up. But then there was like these clique of creatives, you know, like water always seeks its own level, but there was like the dope creatives, and we just automatically kind of just saw something in each other. And whenever any endeavor came up artistically that we could be a part of, we would always see each other around. Maybe it was the African People's Organization, they were doing this, or something was happening, the theater was having this. We would always find each other. And so 1993, 1994, you know, when I'm developing as a writer, when I'm developing as an artist, I meet two dope individuals that become my writing partner. And by writing partners, I mean, we would go to one another's rooms. It would just be us three. Sometimes we would write something together. Sometimes we would just write something. But you had to write something during that endeavor, and you had to share it after. Whatever it was. Sometimes it was dope. Sometimes it wasn't. Sometimes it was just a little piece you could take and do. I mean, something you could develop later on. A lot of the poems that I shared during this piece, and a lot of poems that I've done, came out of that working development. And those two people were Wordsworth and Little D for me at SUNY Old Westbury. That was my writing crew. That was my writing core. And I shared things with them that I didn't share with my other homies, you know? And we had a working relationship, and a relationship that was kind of, it was just different. But I know that, you know, over the course of my life, I realized how important it was and how indebted I am to you and D for making me a part of that, and being willing to share and being willing to receive and helping me to grow and develop into who I am today. You know, I feel so fortunate that I came to SUNY Old Westbury because I found my tribe early. I was accepted and indoctrinated. I was appreciated and I was venerated, and I was allowed to grow in peace, love, and light. And you and D were integral parts of that, you know. And if I did not mention D in this, then we would both be remiss, because she was so important to both of us connecting.
Yeah.
You know, for a large part, she was that least, that most common denominator to our connection, and then our thing grew. You know, and I just wanted to share this last poem that speaks to you, me, and D, and that growing relationship, that relationship that grew and blossomed to 30-year friendship. You know, because
Let's
when I
do
spoke to you after 10, 20 years, man, it was like I had just spoken to you in 90, 94, 95.
it.
You know,
Yeah.
but I wrote this poem and it speaks to who we are and who we've grown, and who we've become and how we developed together. The name of the piece is A Beautiful Few, and this is the last piece I'm going to share for this interview, and I thank you so much for having me. This is A Beautiful Few by poem by T. Tuggle. This last poem is dedicated to close people to me, my writing partners from back in the days, Wordsworth and Little D. The poem is entitled A Beautiful Few, a poem by T. Tuggle. I heard it said true about a beautiful few who mean what they say, just as they do. Though many are called the chosen of few, before nailed to a cross and made to carry it too. Their word is a bond, and they carry it through. The family, the hood, and even the crew, made to carry them too. And now even you have heard it said true about a beautiful few that mean what they say, just as they do. What resides in them lives in me and you, now making us two a beautiful few. Thank you to the viewing and listening audience. Thank you, Words, for having me. Peace, love, and
Oh,
light.
yeah.
Ashe. Words can't describe what our friendship means to me, what you and D, what our time at Old Westbury, what this opportunity means to me, what still being able to reach out and contact you and share with you and consider you friend and brother means to me.
Man.
Thank you
Thank
for this opportunity to share with your viewers and your listeners and your cohort. You've done so many great things, brother. Let me give you your flowers. Because when you were doing the Lyricist Lounge albums, when you were doing the Lyricist Lounge show, where you were helping to write Carmen the Hip Hopper, when you were doing all of your solo albums, where you were doing EMC, when you were being and continue to be your creative self, when you did your children's album, when you became a teacher, all of these things inspired me. When I
Thank you.
wasn't in contact with you, I was just inspired from afar. But
Yeah,
all of
yeah.
these things were a constant reminder of my own talents and what was still maybe dormant that I needed to bring to the surface, you know. And you were still championing that for me and D and for so many others. And I want to let you know how important you've been to
Thank you,
my
man.
growth and development, not just as an artist, but as a human being. You just always been such a great brother and such an inspiration. Continue to do what you do, and thank you, brother. Thank you,
Thank you,
sincerely.
man. And yeah, we're gonna end on that note. Thank y'all again for watching another episode of What Words Are Worth. And like I always ask you, what are your words worth? Peace, y'all. Thank you, man. Sign up now at elevate.miami.edu for my course, Organized Rhyme. Looking at the word legacy, while involving some wordplay, I'll use the first syllable to build upon. We'll use the first syllable, leg. For the second syllable, we'll use an. And for the third syllable, we'll use the word knee. So now we have leg and knee. Can we use it in context with legacy? Let's just see. Wordsworth Productions with a S.com for all merch. I got 2 books available right now. What Words Are Worth Volume 1, and I also have a children's book called Socks. Age range from 12 to 15, so it's kind of like the middle school and high school age range, but adults can read it as well. Shout out to our sponsor, The Whisker. If you're into skincare, The Whisker will help prevent razor bumps and make sure you got smooth skin all around. Make sure you order it on Amazon, The Whisker. Make sure you check out Wordsworth-Productions.com. There you can book me if you want to book me for shows, consultations, panels, and things of that nature. And also it'll give all the upcoming shows that I'll be attending or performing at or appearing at as well. Wordsworth-Productions.com. We write plays, books, movies, anything that deals with writing and creativity. Contact us.